Today on the LA Food Podcast, I'm sick as a dog. I've literally sneezed 8 times while writing the script to this intro. The good news is we've got a hell of an interview today, so the amount you're going to have to put up with my ass is minimal. Melissa Lopez is the James Beard semifinalist chef behind Barra Santos, one of the buzziest restaurants to grace Los Angeles in recent memory. Barra Santos is a tiny sardine-tin of a restaurant in Cypress Park, serving up thoughtful, super high-quality Portuguese fare. But as small as the restaurant's footprint is, the noise it's made since opening has been nothing short of deafening. After visiting the restaurant myself, I knew I wanted to get to know the mastermind behind the operation, and Chef Melissa did not disappoint. Would I go so far as to say we've got one of the country's brightest rising stars on our hands? Yes, I would. But listen to the interview and visit Barra Santos yourself to make up your own mind on the matter. But first, a nasally rendition of a couple of things that caught my eye this week. There's a Jenn Harris piece on how the tariffs are endangering the diversity that makes LA's food scene one of the best in the country, a Substack newsletter on whether or not we should view influencers as experts, and an exciting new survey on what Angelenos want from restaurants that I highly encourage you to take. As always, please consider leaving us a rating or review wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm your host, Lucas Servodio, and without further ado, let's chow down. Unrelated, does anyone have a Dayquil? The LA Food Podcast is presented by The Lonely Oyster. Unwind at The Lonely Oyster's Echo Park Night Watch. Did you know that every night is industry night at The Lonely Oyster, dear listener? Stroll in after 10 p.m. nightly for a one-of-a-kind experience designed for the night owls and hospitality pros. Indulge in $12 handshake cocktails, expertly crafted liquid chef concoctions, delicious late-night hot bites, and chef's choice dozen oysters. More than just a place to unwind, The Lonely Oyster warmly welcomes industry professionals, providing a space where like-minded individuals can connect, relax, and enjoy the camaraderie that comes with the late-night scene. Whether you're looking to kick back after a long shift or simply enjoy the vibrant atmosphere, late night at The Lonely Oyster is the perfect rendezvous for those who appreciate good company and great food and drinks. Don't miss this nightly affair and let the good times roll at The Lonely Oyster. Happy Friday, dear listener. I hope your Friday is going better than mine. As you might be able to tell from my voice, I am severely under the weather. In fact, so is Father Saul, and that's why he is not on today's podcast. And before you ask, no, we did not give it to each other. Good news is we've got a hell of an interview for you today, but of course it would not be the LA Food Podcast if first I didn't tell you about a couple of things that caught my eye this week. First up, if you enjoyed our chat on tariffs last week and what they mean for LA restaurants, I highly recommend checking out a piece Jenn Harris penned for the LA Times on the subject. She spoke with a bunch of restaurants from Knox Kitchen in Westminster to Bayou in Silver Lake and confirmed that Trump's proposed tariffs on goods from Asia and Mexico specifically are already driving up costs for restaurants that rely on imported ingredients. To give you an example, Sri Lankan restaurant Curry Pinch in Los Feliz, which I had not heard of before, saw their grocery bill jump from $1,800 a week to $2,600 a week almost instantly. As expected and as we alluded to in last week's podcast, Chinese restaurants are feeling the strain especially acutely, with Bistro Nas telling Jen that they are reevaluating almost every dish on their menu. This was echoed in Lori Ochoa's Tasting Notes column, in which she covered the plight of chili crisp specialists Fly By Jing, who are similarly facing a steep rise in costs on the ingredients they source from owner Jing Gao's hometown in Sichuan province. I found this piece interesting for a couple of reasons. First is a messaging reason. Jen's framing is that this isn't just a food cost issue. Tariffs are also causing a cultural crisis. Think about LA's reputation as a globally significant food city. Well, it really depends on the diversity and authenticity of its immigrant cuisines, which appear to be severely at risk given the tariffs. She's basically saying, okay, the tariffs are meant to protect American goods, but what does that even mean when it comes to quote unquote American food? She brings up this awesome stat, which is that 10% of restaurants in America serve Mexican food and 12% serve some sort of Asian cuisine. American food, she says, is tantamount to the coming together of all of these global cuisines. Stepping back from that for a minute, that's a framing that very much tugs at my heartstrings, but I think that we forget sometimes as progressives or liberals or whatever we want to call it, that the other side hears those statistics and interprets them in a completely different way. They're like, you're telling me that 10% of restaurants in America are Mexican and 12% are Asian, like that's a good thing? They would view that as proof supporting their argument that quote-unquote American culture is being subverted by immigrants. That's why I think the economic argument Jenn is making is a far more powerful one across the board. Even people in my life who I know are Republican have been mad as hell at Trump these past couple of weeks because his policies are now directly impacting their pocketbooks. So when we're out there talking about why tariffs are bad for restaurants, I think the numbers of rising grocery bills go a lot further than preemptively mourning the loss of a diverse food landscape. Now, let me be clear. I'm not saying that the goal of this piece specifically should be to convince Republicans that the tariffs are bad policy. In fact, I think it totally makes sense for Jenn to advance this thesis in the LA Times, given the LA Times audience. But it just gets me thinking about how this would play in the arguments I'm hearing out there for and against tariffs, both online and in person, and I'm sure that many of you are having the same arguments too. So in case you're trying to decide which arguments make for the most effective ones, I would say lean on the economic ones. There's plenty of proof there to lean on. The second thing I found super interesting was a sustainability factor brought up by the owner of Bayou and Silver Lake. You know, as folks have been looking for silver linings with respect to the tariffs, some folks have been saying, well, hey, at least if restaurants are forced to source locally, that'll be better for the environment, right? The idea being that cutting down on the transportation emissions required for imported ingredients is somehow more sustainable. Well, it turns out that's not always the case. It's not just about transportation, it's also about farming practices and how they differ from country to country. The owner of Bayou brought up the fact that while you think it might be more sustainable to get your avocados in California, avocados grown in Mexico actually require a hell of a lot less water to farm, which more than makes up for the transportation emissions required to get them over here. So another reminder that even the upsides of these tariffs come with a bunch of downsides. I'll link that post in the show notes. I highly recommend giving it a read. Whether you're a restaurateur looking to sort of understand how other restaurateurs are experiencing these tariffs, or whether you're a consumer trying to make sense of these rising prices, I think just staying on top of all of this news is a really important thing to do. Also, so you as a diner can be a helpful resource to other people in your immediate circle in terms of letting them know, hey, this is what's going on and this is what you can do to be helpful. The second thing that caught my eye this week has nothing to do with tariffs. It's an article by Khushbu Shah in her excellent Substack newsletter, Tap is Fine, which I highly recommend you go and subscribe to. The article is titled, When Did We All Become Afraid of Being Amateurs? And the thesis is essentially this. Influencer culture has conflated the ability to feed the algorithm and gain followers with people passing themselves off as experts with deep knowledge on a subject. She uses a couple of examples, and I'm very thankful that she did not include me. The first example is the popular New York-based TikTok account, The VIP List. If you're not familiar, these are two women who visit restaurants and offer snarky, over-the-top reviews that sort of toe the line between like parody and actual review, and more often than not, they end their videos with the sentence, "Go cry about it." Khushbu took issue with the review of South Indian restaurant Sema, in which they referred to butter chicken as tiki masala, not tikka masala, tiki masala, and demonstrated an overall lack of understanding of the cuisine. She also singled out home cook and blogger Half Baked Harvest for consistently lacking cultural context and for ignoring proper pronunciation as well as attribution. Myself, I particularly enjoyed a humorous description of Half Baked's recipe for Cuban taquitos, which are basically regular taquitos with Swiss cheese. In the words of the poet Randall Jackson, that's a no for me, dog. Khushbu argues that the performative expertise results in shallow, often culturally disrespectful content that misleads audiences who trust influencers as authorities. Rather, she says, True authority comes from depth, curiosity, and humility. She brings up the example of John Kung, a chef and cookbook author who took his followers on an honest journey as he stumbled his way through making a pie for the first time. The argument is basically that it's okay to not know everything. In fact, we should normalize and even celebrate the process of learning. There's beauty, honesty, even entertainment in watching somebody explore something new. I want to bring this article up for a couple of reasons. One is relief. Whenever I see a piece like this, I'm always deeply relieved to not be the one called out. What does that say about me? Probably nothing good, but I'll let you know what it feels like when my time to be on the chopping block inevitably comes due. But most importantly, while I actually think Khushbu is making a super important point here, I also think there should be a bit more onus put on the consumers. Like, why are these people, like the VIP list and Half-Baked Harvest, allowed to pose as experts? Well, because the vast majority of us allow them to. We're the ones watching the videos, commenting, and throwing them a like. You can argue as much as you want that it's the algorithm's fault, but the algorithm serves you what it knows you're going to like. This isn't just an influencer problem, this is also an us problem. But to zoom out even further, I kind of found myself wondering, is this even a problem? Sure, there are some really obvious issues with what Half-Baked Harvest is doing, like stealing shawarma recipes and passing them off as Indian. That's not just offensive, it's offensively stupid. But do we need every influencer we watch and trust to be an expert? I kind of think the most valuable service an influencer brings to the table isn't their knowledge, it's their ability to be the boots on the ground. Let's be honest, nobody has the time to scope out the many thousands of restaurants across a city as vast as LA. Having your Rick Loxes and Hungry in LAs to make well-edited videos that showcase what the food looks like is kind of a huge asset in and of itself. The fact that they pass judgment on the food, with their Lox levels and shit, that's kind of secondary. I kind of think we all need to be armed with an enormous grain of salt when watching these videos, and I say that as someone who makes videos myself. I'm fully aware that not everyone is going to agree with my likes and dislikes. If I'm being brutally honest, taking a position is a useful tool for getting my video more views. It's the disgusting algorithm economy, and we're all just playing the game. But as a viewer, you don't have to take anybody's word as Bible. Personally, I use influencers as my eyes and ears, but I use my own taste buds to draw conclusions on the food. As I said, really great article from an excellent Substack newsletter. I highly recommend subscribing. We'll put it in the show notes. Finally, before we move on to our interview, a couple of plugs. It seems to be survey season. I just saw Eater published a survey in terms of what diners are looking for, but the one I really wanted to zero in on is Emily Wilson of The Angel. She's running a survey titled, "What do Angelenos want from restaurants right now?" It was inspired actually by her recent visit to the brand new Laurel Grill in Culver City. She was struck by the fact that the restaurant felt like a blatant ripoff of the Hillstone restaurants, and it got her wondering, is this what Angelenos want nowadays? She asks, and I'm reading from the piece now, are we simply after more R&D kitchens and honor bars? Laurel Grill is not the only new restaurant that's either derivative or safe. She says the survey is designed to assess the current desires of the dining public, and she hopes the answers will be helpful for diners and restaurateurs alike. The survey includes questions like, it's Friday night, where are you ideally having dinner? And do you have a neighborhood restaurant? If yes, what is it? It's running this week, the survey, and Emily's slated to publish the results shortly after, hopefully next Wednesday. If the results drop in time, you best believe we'll be discussing it on this podcast, so go take the survey. We'll link it in the show notes. Personally, I'm really interested to see what this yields. We hear a lot about what restaurateurs are interested in bringing to market, but not a whole lot about what diners are actually interested in. I have guesses on the latter, but nothing based in fact. Not that that's ever stopped me before, but given the fact that we've got a legit survey on the way, I'll keep those guesses to myself for now. Finally, friend of the pod Gab Chabran and Suzanne Levy of LAist published an article on a new round of $10,000 grants being offered by the California Restaurant Foundation. Reading directly from the piece, restaurants and food trucks that have been seriously affected by the fires can now apply for grants of $10,000 to help them get back on their feet. The program is being put together by the California Restaurant Foundation, which aims to disperse almost $2.5 million to help more than 200 restaurants. To apply, if this sounds like something that you or your restaurant could benefit from, head to www.restaurantscare.org/resilience-LA-fire to apply between April 9th and April 26th. We're putting that link in the show notes. But one thing that has become abundantly clear as we see the continuing stream of articles on restaurant closures is that the impacts of the fires and of the strikes from last year are still very much being felt. The good news is you're not alone. There are resources like these to help. So go check out the link, see if you're eligible, and if you are eligible, apply. That'll probably do for today. Coming up next, my interview with Chef Melissa Lopez of Barra Santos in Cypress Park. You know, a lot of the interviews you hear on this podcast are ones that are pitched to me, but this is one that I actually asked for proactively after visiting Barra Santos myself. I was very impressed with their tight, super high quality menu of Portuguese offerings, a cuisine that's actually really hard to get your hands on in LA. I also very much enjoyed the overall experience. It's a tiny sardine tin of a restaurant, but if you're lucky enough to get a seat at the bar, it's a truly special experience because what you get is a front row seat to the cooks working on pretty much every step of the food. It's like a next level open kitchen because you're up close and personal. You can hear the sizzles, you can see the splutters, you can even feel the heat. It's like a VR headset of being on the line, except it's even better than VR because you're in person. When Chef Melissa was longlisted for a James Beard Award this year, I was like, that's it, I've got to speak with her. And here is our conversation coming up right after the break. Dear listener, I made a deal with my wife. She let me start a food podcast and eat ungodly amounts of noodles, pizza, sandwiches, and more under two conditions. One is that I never utter her name. The other is that I find ways to be healthy outside of my work in food. Being the fantastic partner I am, I found a few ways to up my health game. I exercise almost every day, I try to sneak in salads for lunch whenever I can, and I only ever snack on healthy foods. The macadamia nut has become an essential part of my daily routine with the best omega-6 to 3 ratios in the nut game, 8 times better than pistachios and 20 times better than cashews. At houseofmacadamias.com, they've got a bunch of different macadamia products that you can enjoy, like savory and sweet snack packs and chocolate-covered snack bars. One of the problems with macadamias I've found is that they can be expensive, but I'm solving this for you, dear listener, because as of today, all you've got to do is head to houseofmacadamias.com and use code LAFOOD to get a 10% discount on a healthy snack that also happens to be delicious. So what are you waiting for? Head to www.houseofmacadamias.com/discount/LAFood and go nuts. Well, it's my honor today to welcome to the LA Food Podcast. She's the James Beard semifinalist chef of Barra Santos in Cypress Park. It's Melissa Lopez. Chef, how you doing today?
Very good. Thank you so much for having me. Really happy to be here at Barra Santos with you, talking about live food and whatever else you want to talk about.
I love it. Life, food, whatever else we want to talk about.
Yeah.
Let me start with this. It's a question we ask all our guests as a bit of an icebreaker. What did you have for breakfast today?
Well, I actually skipped breakfast because it was an early start. So I guess a cup of coffee and probably grab a sandwich next door or something for lunch.
Oh, nice. What's the sandwich place next door?
So it's Golden Poppy Market. They have a lot of it's a really great market in the neighborhood, a lot of provisions, but a lot of grab and go kind of items. It's good to have on the block.
Do you have a go-to sandwich there?
We switch it up. Adrian and I, my sous chef, we usually split a sandwich not to commit too much to, we have to do a lot of tasting during the day. So just a little snackaroo.
Yeah. Nice. Good to know. Golden Poppy. There's a lot of good sandwiches around here. Up the street, you got Bub and Grandma's too. So.
Yeah, it's a great, it's one of my favorite Italian sandwiches. I live on the west side, so Breadhead is also a really great sandwich.
I love Breadhead, that focaccia.
Yeah. Oh my God, yeah.
Oh my God, incredible.
I love old school though. Bay City's deli is go-to.
Yeah.
Quick grab and go, but always on point there.
Kind of nice to have both options though, right? You got the old school Bay Cities route, but you also got sort of the new school Breadhead route too. So.
Yeah, and I mean I'm a sucker for sandwiches. Good and bad, I'll eat them all.
Yeah, is there such thing as a bad sandwich?
No, absolutely not.
Exactly. Well, Chef, obviously you mentioned that we are at Barra Santos. In case anybody hasn't been here before, because this is primarily an audio medium, can you sort of describe the space to folks?
Yeah, I think that Barra Santos is a 600 square foot bar restaurant, mostly restaurant. People I think get confused that we just have snacks or tapas because we are a Portuguese restaurant, but we do have a full service menu. We have a whole fish. We do steaks, full ribeyes on the weekend. We cook off of a 24-inch flat top, 4 burners, and a salamander and a tabletop fryer. So we're able to do a lot with a little, but it has like a very European vibe. We have a exposed brick wall, nice long mahogany bar. A lot of tables outside, so you do get that kind of like cafe Euro feeling when you're outside. But yeah, we dim the lights, we light the candles, and then we usually have a good night.
Yeah, I mean, what I love about it is, all that equipment you just mentioned, it's all on display for the diners.
Exactly, yeah.
It's like you really are getting dinner and a show when you're here.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's one of my favorite things about being a part of this restaurant is just the experience that you do have with guests as a chef, but also as like cooks. Our cooks run food and clear plates, and they're very interactive with throughout the dining experience.
Yeah, totally. I love that. Well, we're gonna get back to Barra Santos and sort of how to craft the perfect dinner here, especially for first timers. But I want to zoom out for a moment because I understand you're not from Los Angeles. Is that right?
Right, exactly. I've lived in LA for 11 years now. I moved here in 2014 from New York City. I lived in New York for about 8 years, but I'm originally from Nogales, Arizona, a small town on the border in Arizona.
Nice.
Yeah, it's really great upbringing, small town vibes. You kind of know everyone there. You like see people at the grocery store and you say hi, you give them a hug and a kiss because that's the Mexican way. But yeah, I had a lot of time with cousins and family, and yeah, it was a really great upbringing.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so what was your relationship to food growing up? I'm assuming you got some pretty good food being down there.
Yeah, I mean, primarily Mexican food, but very great Mexican food. Like northern Mexicans, they have a lot of like flour tortillas, and we used to get together with family on Sundays for like a carne asada is what we call it, just like grilled meats and tacos. And yeah, it was a very great food experience growing up. Not a lot of variety by any means, but what we did do there was done very well.
Yeah. When did you actually start gravitating towards cooking?
Yeah, my great grandmother was an amazing cook. So I was fortunate to meet her, and I was very young, but like eat her food. And my brother Miguel we would go and visit her, and he would like always talk to her about food and try to get recipes. And she was very she kept those near and dear to her heart, so she wasn't giving up a lot of her secrets. But my brother Miguel and my brother Mario are really great cooks, so a lot of cooking and experienced food with them and through them and cooking with them. Yeah.
Did they also go into the industry?
No, absolutely not. No.
You were the only one crazy enough to.
Exactly. Yeah. My one brother's a lawyer. My other brother's a writer. So.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So what inspired you to actually pursue it professionally?
It's kind of a good question. It feels like I kind of fell into it a little bit.
Yeah.
I remember visiting New York to see my brothers who lived there at the time. And I went to tour the French Culinary Institute in New York City in Soho. And we walked in and I saw them like making baguettes and like tasted a fresh baguette out of the oven. And I was like, what is this? And like, I don't think I'd ever had bread like that in that capacity or that like quality of bread.
Yeah.
And then I was kind of hooked. I was like, I want to go to school here. I want to figure out how to live in New York, because I thought at the time that was the best city in the world for food. Yeah. Not that I had that much exposure to other things, but I knew I wanted to live there and cook there. That was it. And I signed up. I paid a lot of money to go to school there. And I was hooked from then.
Did you have any other alternative career paths that you explored before doing that?
Well, I went to the University of Arizona and studied journalism there, kind of because I had to go to college it was kind of expected in my family. So it was kind of like a box to check.
Yeah.
But knew that once I went to that culinary school, that was going to be my career.
So you went to school, studied journalism.
Yeah.
And then before you really got into the career path of journalism,
right,
you stuck your toe into the culinary school pond and were like, I like the way this feels. Yeah,
it was I loved the camaraderie of like the kitchen and like working with people, and I loved eating too. So that's always helpful. And just like cooking and starting something from nothing to make this like amazing dish, especially there specifically, they like taught you the basics of French cuisine and cooking and, building like a mother sauce and all these like things that I would never necessarily do today, but like having that foundation and like making a stock and like, the guys will tell you in the kitchen that like making stock is one of my most favorite things, because you start with vegetables and water and make something that is going to make something really delicious.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I know that there's a little bit of debate out there about like whether it's the smartest thing to do to go to culinary school, or whether people should just like get stuck in and start working in kitchens and sort of make that their education.
Yeah.
Do you have a perspective on that, since you've sort of like went the culinary school route?
I think for me, it was a good way to get into the culinary world. I was a much older student. I was probably one of the older students who was in my class. But looking back, had I gone from high school to cooking in restaurants, I think that would have been a really great experience as well. It kind of just depends on where you are in life and how you want to get into things. We have a sous chef here, Adrian, who is, I think he's 22, and, he's been cooking since he was 16. And, now he's running a restaurant in Los Angeles, and he is creative and understands flavors. And, I don't think that path is for everyone. I do think that he's a one of kind of one.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily know if culinary school would have been the best path for him. I think experience in real kitchens has been really good for him. And, for me, I don't think I could have said that.
Yeah. Right. So it just kind of depends on the person.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So you're in culinary school in New York, and obviously eventually it becomes time to start getting your first jobs, I assume, in kitchens.
Yeah.
Where'd you end up, and how was that experience for you?
Yeah. So my brothers had a friend who worked in restaurants in New York as a server, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll get you a kitchen job." And I said, "Okay." So I go to this restaurant. It's called Nicole's. It was on the Upper East Side. It was in a Nicole Fari store, so kind of like a designer store, and they had a kitchen in there.
Oh, cool.
And I met the chef, and he's like, "Okay, well, we only have a position in pastry." And I was like, "Great." So I was like, "I'm terrible at pastry. I'm a terrible baker." So that was my first. I was going to culinary school 3 days a week, and then I worked at an office to just get some cash, and then worked in the kitchen 4 days a week. And I worked in pastry, and I was terrible at it. I messed up so many things, and they were very patient with me. And yeah, but I learned a lot there, and I learned that it's okay to make mistakes if you don't make them twice.
Yeah. Is there anything you learned from those days in pastry, like actual cooking wise, that you still take with you today?
Yeah, for sure. I think that measuring is important. It's basically, that's all pastry is. But, I don't think I had the patience to do that when I was a young cook. And now I understand the importance of it. Like to this day, all of our recipes are measured in grams, and, there's methods to it, and they're very pastry-esque in terms of the process and the measuring of things.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the only way that you can have a consistent restaurant, is if you're able to give a recipe to 4 different people and the dish comes out the exact same way every time.
Yeah, that sounds hard.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah. That's always the hardest thing about restaurants, is just being consistent.
Yeah, totally. So you went on to have work in some great kitchens in New York, including at Barbudo, but eventually you decided to move to Los Angeles. What inspired that move?
It was partly personal, but I think I was ready for a change. I was sick of winters, but I landed in Los Angeles and started working at Bestio, which was, both my experiences at Barbudo and Bestio were very different, but very much shaped who I am today as a cook and as a chef.
Yeah. So before moving here, what were your sort of preconceptions of Los Angeles' food scene as someone in New York? Because you said earlier, at the time, I thought New York was the best food city in the world.
Yeah.
But it sounds like at some point you start to think, oh, there might be some other things out there.
Yeah, I don't think I knew what to expect from Los Angeles. I knew that the produce was great because we used to get produce from LA or California and New York. So I knew that Los Angeles definitely had a leg up in that regard. But yeah, I wasn't sure really what to expect. And when I went to Bessie and I tried the food there, it was almost nothing like I had tasted in New York.
Yeah. And so you tasted the food at Bessie before getting a job there, or did you go because you had already been hired?
I think I had dined there before I applied to get a job there.
Yeah. And so what year are we talking about?
This was 2014.
So this is right the peak of Bestia's powers. It was really the hottest table in town.
Yeah, and I remember then staging, and my stage was 11 hours, and I remember leaving that and calling my sister in the car who was living in Los Angeles, and she's like, "Well, how did it go?" I was like, "It was amazing. I don't know what I'm gonna have to do to get the job here, but I'm gonna get the job here."
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so how did you ultimately land that job?
I think my work ethic kind of speaks for itself in that stage, and I think that I was excited to be a part of something that I knew was going to be big.
Yeah.
I knew the food was amazing, and it's an incredible restaurant to be a part of. It's very intense, and it's a lot of work, but it's shaped who I am today. And I always tell people, or I used to tell people who work there, is if you work here and you learn foundation and you understand how flavors work, you can get a job anywhere and it's going to feel easy. And that's 100% true, because I'm here and it's busy. We can do, a couple, 100 covers or 200 covers on the weekend, and it feels easy. I don't know else how to describe it, but that.
It reminds me, it sounds like almost like when athletes go and do altitude training,
Yeah, exactly.
go to the altitude, you run your ass off at that altitude in order to build up that lung capacity.
Mhm.
And then finally you go back to wherever it is you play your regular games, and all of a sudden you're like, you feel faster, you got more energy.
Yeah.
Kind of feels like Bestia was your altitude training.
No, 100%. And I remember when we first opened here, my business partner, Adam, he's like, Melissa, he's like, it's going to be okay. He's like, it's going to get really busy and then it's going to stop.
Yeah.
And I was like, what do you mean it's going to stop? It's like, they can't stop. And he's like, there's nowhere else for people to sit. It'll stop. And he was right. Like the board got full of tickets and then it just stopped. It took like, 15, 20 minutes to get like through all the tickets and we just started all over again. But the idea of like being able to manage it a little bit better where you're not like stressed out all the time and you have this like pressure to like continually cook and don't stop cooking. I mean, at best you cook from 5 o'clock till like 11:30 at night, like every night, which is an amazing experience as a cook. You get your reps and you get better and you get faster and you get cleaner and all these things that are going to make you a better cook. So I'm very grateful for that experience.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I want to sort of ask you about Bestia more, because one thing that strikes me about Bestia is like, it's been around for, now 10 plus years. Yeah. It's still extremely successful. And we obviously know how difficult it is in Los Angeles to sustain that kind of success, having been inside the belly of the Bestia, so to speak. What do you think is like one of the secrets of their success?
I think it's their, Chef Ori is like a chef that he's no one I've ever met before. He's constantly innovating and changing and he never settles. And consistency, like I said before, is the hardest thing in restaurants. And he's kind of nailed that on a daily basis in a restaurant that does, 400 plus covers a night, which is insane.
Wild.
Yeah. Wild. Yeah.
The other thing that strikes me about Chef Ori and Bestia, I'm now realizing that I've interviewed a number of chefs who used to work at Bestia, and always point to it as like a formative experience, like yourself, Diego Argotti of Poltergeist, Chef, the chef at Cento Pasta Bar as well.
Chef Avner.
Chef Avner, exactly. And it reminds me, it feels like, Bestia plants all these like seedlings around town, and they
it's definitely I'm a branch of that tree for sure. And, seeing, Chef Drew at Ati and having him having success and a lot of like really great press and just really great accolades for his food. And Chef Maynard, who won the James Beard last year, like coming up from that kind of restaurant and seeing where everyone has gone is like I'm sure it's a very proud moment for Chef Ori.
Yeah. But I'm assuming it's a proud moment for all of you too.
100%. Yeah, tree. Absolutely. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So obviously you worked at Bestia for a while. At what point did the opportunity to pursue something with Last Word?
So Adam and I have known each other for a long time, and he would always tell me when I worked at Bestia, he's like, Melissa, one day we're going to open up a restaurant together. It's like, okay, buddy, sure, Adam. And I think it was in 2022 that 21, I think it was. Anyways, he came and he approached me. He's like, I have this project. It's going to be a small Portuguese bar and a pizza shop. And I said, well, I've never cooked Portuguese food. I don't even know what it is. He said, just come see the space. We'll talk then. So I drive down, I see the space. We're in Barra Santos. It's a dirt floor. The wall behind the back bar is not built. It's just a brick wall. And I walk in and he's like, this is it. I said, what do you mean this is it? He's like, this is it. I said, where's everything else? He's like, the kitchen's back there and this is the bar. I was like, this is like my dream restaurant.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I think from working at Barbudo is such a juggernaut of a place, especially in the summertime. Working at Bestia for 5 years and going through that like juggernaut of a restaurant every day was like felt like you were going into battle. It's a weird way to describe something, but that's how it felt. And then walking into this space, which is narrow and small and a little quirky, and through the build out, like everything fits perfectly here. Like there's not one thing that's like, oh, that's kind of in the way. No, it's like, it's almost like designed to the T, like every inch makes sense here.
Yeah.
And, I've always wanted to be in a restaurant where I could see people eat our food, and this is it. Like we're cooking 2 feet from people who are eating our food.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So it almost seems like, the change alone of going from those massive juggernauts to this space, it probably felt like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, for sure. And it's, it's been a really great experience. My business partner, Mike, him and I are like, he's like my brother. And I had known him before, but him and I are like we're so in sync all the time, which is also a really great working experience. It feels fun to come to work every day and to be part of something, and and to bring up people like Adrian and other cooks that are here. And that's definitely the best part of working here.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you hadn't ever cooked Portuguese food before.
Yeah.
How did you study? How did you learn what to do?
I read a ton of cookbooks, like grandmother cookbooks, like, Portuguese chefs that are like, well-known chefs in Europe who've written cookbooks. And so I, like, any Portuguese cookbook that I could get my hands on, I bought it and I tried to read everything.
Yeah.
We were lucky enough to go to Portugal for about a week in the summer before we opened. So that was a great experience. And, the thing about Portuguese food, it feels very similar to Italian food that I had cooked for a long time. It's just really great ingredients and simple preparation, not a lot to it. So we kind of try to mimic that here. Obviously, with California, you have a lot more abundance of produce, and, Portuguese products are not easy to come by here. So that's been a little bit difficult at times. But, we found our way, and I think our version of Portuguese food here is pretty good.
I would say so.
Yeah.
And the accolades definitely bolster that case. Can you give us an example of maybe something on your menu as it was coming together where you were like, it's going to be way too hard to get the actual Portuguese product for this? How can we adapt?
Well, I think the biggest thing, and we didn't really adapt, I think we just kind of dove right in, is just getting salt cod, because salt cod or bacalhau is like a staple of Portuguese cuisine. And, I'm very, I think, particular about products that we use, and that stems from working at Barbuda and working at Bessie with Chef Warren and Chef Waxman, is that stuff is super important. Like, you can't make a great dish without a great product.
Yeah.
And so finding bacalhau that we loved was really difficult at first, but we were able to find a purveyor and get that from him for, a couple of years until, like, global supply shortages kind of like messed it up recently. But, we're trying to get back to making fritters, because that was one of our favorite and most sold items here. So,
They're damn good.
Yeah, they're very good. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's just important to, whatever you do, just get a great product and don't sacrifice something just because you can get it and it's not good. So,
yeah. Well, that's an important ethos. And I think it's been probably a reason behind your guys' success. There aren't a ton of Portuguese restaurants in Los Angeles, right? Like,
right.
I can't really think of a single other one. Did that at all play into any sort of, like, anxiety around opening the restaurant in terms of, like, introducing what's kind of a relatively new concept to people?
I honestly think it was the opposite. I think it was super helpful for us, because I don't think people had expectations for what it should be or what it could be or anything like that. I think they kind of walked in here and kind of came in with not a lot of preconceived notions of what Portuguese food is. So I think it was kind of beneficial for us.
That's good. That's actually an interesting perspective too. It's like, if you're the only game or the first game in town, you sort of get to define what it is.
Absolutely. Yeah. Exactly.
And what about Cypress Park? Obviously, like, this is a neighborhood where up until, I think, before Barra Santos came and Shin's next door, it was mostly, I think, businesses that have been here for a long time. It's obviously like a new wave of business coming in. How did you find coming into this community? What has the reception been?
Yeah, I think the reception has been really great. I think that, it's hard to, like, have a business be here for a long time. My parents were business owners for a long time, and to then have to realize that you're going to have to, like, close and something else is going to come, something new and different. I do think that might be difficult for some people in the neighborhood. But I think what we've tried to do is really become part of the community. And, this is an amazing block of businesses. We have Loquat, the amazing coffee shop down the block. We have the barber shop. I don't get my haircut there, but I know a lot of people who work here do and want to support the business on the block. Obviously, we talked about Golden Poppy, which is a great market. Yeah, and I think it's just important to become part of the community that you're going to be a part of.
Yeah, as opposed to just parachuting in kind of and just like hoping it works out.
Yeah,
totally. I think that's a really good ethos.
Yeah, we also host like a lot of like kind of like quarterly block parties that a lot of the businesses on the block all participate in, which brings people from the community out to like check out things. So that's been really helpful and great for us as a business to know people. And yeah, it's been a really good ride here at Cypress.
That's awesome. So for people who have never been to Barra Santos before, how would you recommend they craft a meal?
It's a great question. So I think starting with a Lisbon special, like when we were in Portugal that summer, you kind of sit down and they automatically give you olive, cheese, and bread. And it's kind of like a staple of starting a meal. So we do have a Lisbon special here. We serve ours with Iberico ham and a Portuguese cheese of the day, and some olives that we marinate with coriander and orange, which are really great. I think definitely starting with Lisbon special. Porto Tonico is like a great like little spritzer kind of drink to start, gets your palate going. Tuna crudo is one of our top selling items and super fresh, just light, but the tuna is really great quality. Endive salad is one of my favorite things I've ever made. It's just texturally really great. Every bite's a little different. Like there's oranges in there, cilantro, Malva roasted cheese, which is a Spanish sheep's milk cheese. It's just like creamy and then I'm a sucker for our bifana. It's marinated pork with a piso, which is like a green herb sauce. We like toast bub and grandma's ciabatta on the flat top, and we cut it in four so it's easy to share. Yeah, and I love our whole fish as well.
Yeah, and the best part is you're seeing it all come to life right before you as you sit at the bar, which
Absolutely.
is really, really cool.
Yeah.
So obviously you've experienced a ton of success since you've opened. You've been added to the Michelin Guide.
Mm-hmm.
You were named a semifinalist for the James Beard Awards this year. Congratulations.
Thank you.
How has it been to receive all these accolades?
Yeah, it's good. I think it's a testament to all our hard work, and not just mine, but like everyone who work here. It takes a village to make a restaurant be successful and welcoming. And, I'm only a part of it, obviously a bigger part than most of the other people, but, I can't make all the food here. I can't prep all the food. So we really rely on our staff who we trust in, and we want them to make the right decisions and be a part of something that's really great.
I actually know that that's something that you are extremely well respected for in the industry, is mentoring your staff and like giving them opportunities. Tell me about why that's important to you and how you do that.
I think it happened to me when I was a young cook. I remember my chef at Barbuda, obviously Chef Waxman was there, but there was a Chef Roel, and he really took me under his wing and he taught me a lot. And I always admired that from him, and I respect that. And I always wanted to be that to other people.
Yeah, that's paying it forward.
Exactly.
So
yeah,
that's really
absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah.
I want to talk about Shin's next door, obviously, because that was my favorite pizza spot in the neighborhood.
Yeah, thank you.
Not just Cypress Park, but maybe in like all of Northeast Los Angeles. Yeah. And I know you recently made the tough decision to close it. I know that restaurants have had a really tough economic go of it over the last couple of years. What was behind the decision to say goodbye?
I mean, obviously it was a tough decision. I think we were really proud of what we were trying to do, our, made to order salads and like really great, like East Coast style pizza. It's just the margins in restaurants are tight, and, we ultimately weren't making very much money, and it was really hard to like let the staff go and to close that shop. But, I think that most business owners have to face a tough reality in this economy. And, it's difficult with pizza specifically because, like I said, with Portuguese food, people don't have an expectation of what it is or what it should be.
Yeah.
And pizza, like, it's a dime a dozen. You can get pizza from anywhere, and, maybe it's good, maybe it's not, but what it could be. And I think we were using, like I said, a really great product, and maybe that didn't translate necessarily to pizza, but, I was really proud of that concept and all the work that we put into it. And it's definitely a bummer that it didn't pan out, but.
Hey, I eat a lot of pizza, and it translated to me. I love
Thank
that
you.
stuff. The mortadella slice, I was actually really skeptical of it when I first saw it, because I was like, how is this going to work with like just one slice of mortadella draped over the slice? Mm-hmm. But then, of course, it's New York style. You're supposed to fold it. So it actually rippled really nicely.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I was a big fan of that. The one thing I will absolutely request that makes a comeback someday is that arancino at the bar.
Oh, yeah.
Arancino. Yeah. My wife will not let us leave the house, or used to not let us leave the house without getting one of those. So.
Yeah, I thought that was going to be our moneymaker. And, I love the combination of that. The texturally was really great. The pork was super rich, but the rice kind of cut through it a little bit. The furikake on top was like this little like sweetness that you kind of needed to kind of cut through the richness of the pork. But yeah, I mean, I'm not making those at home, but I definitely miss them.
I would make those at home if I knew how, honestly.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, hey, I did want to ask you a couple of final questions, which we ask all our guests. First of all, besides Barra Santos, what are 3 restaurants in LA that you're really enjoying eating at right now?
Well, I'm like a Hillstone person. I love Hillstone. It's just like the consistency of it is really good. I'm a sucker for that chicken sandwich. I get it every time.
Ding's crispy chicken.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's kind of a cop-out answer, but it's a really great restaurant, and the consistency is always on point.
I feel like if I interviewed 100 chefs, like 70 of them would mention a Hillstone restaurant, so totally not a cop-out at all.
Okay, good. Yeah, I love Ototo's a really great spot. I don't know, I'm just going to do 2 today.
Just going to do 2. That's fine.
Yeah.
Hillstone and Ototo. You can have plenty of good meals there. Finally, when you look back on your journey so far, from Arizona to Barra Santos, what are you most proud of?
I think just mentoring people and having people come up and go on to do bigger and better things. And yeah, that's always my goal, is to bring people up with me and then see them fly away.
Yeah, I love that.
It's a bittersweet, but it's the most rewarding thing for me, for sure.
What's the old saying? If you love them, let them go.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, Chef Melissa, I just want to say congrats on all your success and Barra Santos' success. We love having it near, this is right in our neck of the woods, so we're so stoked it exists. Thank you for joining us.
I appreciate this interview. You're super easy. Yeah, it was a really great time with you today. Thank you so much.
Of course. We'll see you over here for some sock hop fritters whenever they're back.
Yeah, exactly. Once they're back on the menu.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the LA Food Podcast. Thanks to Melissa Lopez for joining us, and thank you to you, dear listener, for putting up with my nasally voice today. If you like what you heard here, please go to wherever you listen to podcasts, leave us a rating, review, subscribe. Seriously, all that stuff really means the world to us. We'll be back next week with another epic episode. Hopefully, we'll both be healthy again. Of course, if you're looking for us in the meantime, you can find us on TikTok, Instagram, Threads, YouTube, and even our website at the LA Countdown. That's TheLaCountdown. You can also find us on Instagram at LA Food Pod. That's LAFOODPOD.